Welcome to the Lorraine Metropolitan Housing Authority Housing Choice Voucher Program orientation. This is presented by the employees of the Housing Choice Voucher Program Department.
Congratulations, you have been chosen from a waiting list to receive a voucher for assistance through the Housing Choice Voucher Program. The voucher you are about to receive is very valuable. Only 1 out of 4 households who are eligible for federal rental assistance actually receives it because of limited funding from the government. Low-income seniors, people with disabilities, and working families with children eligible for the voucher program often wait years for assistance. Make sure you hold on to your voucher by following your obligations to the program and abiding by your lease agreement.
This illustrates how the program works. The Housing Choice Voucher Program consists of 3 important documents. There's the lease, the contract, and the voucher. This triangle shows the relationship between each document.
Lease agreement. Once you have found a rental unit, you or the landlord must provide the housing authority with a copy of the lease agreement. We must ensure that the information on the lease matches our information on the HAP contract. We must ensure that the lease does not violate any federal regulations or HCVP policies.
The following rules and regulations set forth by HUD must be followed by all participants who want to receive assistance with their housing through the Housing Choice Voucher Program. All family members must supply any information, certifications, and sign release forms at HUD or the Housing Authority to terms as necessary in the administration of the program. This includes any required evidence of citizenship or eligible immigration status and pertains to all adults listed on the lease. The family must report all changes in earned income and family composition in writing within 10 business days of the change occurring. If you fail to report income or members residing in your unit, your assistance will be in jeopardy.
The family is obligated if the family causes a breach in housing quality standards, which pertains to utilities. Effective July 1st, 2019, landlords may keep utilities in their name and bill the family. The family is no longer required to put the utilities in their name or in the name of another adult household member. If the family will be responsible for paying a utility, even if the utility will remain in the landlord's name, the RFTA and the lease must state the family is responsible for payment. LMHA's Housing Choice Voucher staff will no longer verify utilities prior to the execution of the housing assistance payment contract. We will, however, verify that utilities are on during the initial housing quality standards inspection. Families will receive a utility allowance for tenant-paid utilities as stated on the request for tenancy approval, the lease and HAP contract, regardless if the utility is in the name of the landlord or the tenant. Appliances, effective July 1st, 2019, LMHA inspectors will no longer verify who is responsible for providing the stove and refrigerator at the annual inspection. LMHA inspectors will inspect in accordance with the housing quality standards. If the stove and or refrigerator fail inspection, we will notify the landlord and the tenant and place responsibility on fixing the appliance on the person stated in the lease. It is up to the landlord and tenant to notify us when responsibilities changes. LMHA is required to implement a new HAP contract for changes in utilities and appliances. As always, appliances must be in good operating condition. Damages. Family must not damage the unit or permit any guest to damage the unit. The family is responsible for any damages done to the unit.
Family obligations continue. The landlord will notify the housing authority if the family is damaging the unit or failing to maintain utility services. This will require them to perform their own inspection. If they find there is excessive damages, lack of maintenance, or suspended utility services, they will submit pictures, video, or other documentation to this office. This will hold up any vouchers to move or may be grounds for termination. Note that this rule applies even if you have already been issued a voucher. In other words, your voucher may be revoked.
With proper notice, families are obligated to allow the landlord to enter the unit in order to make repairs or inspect as required. If the tenant fails to allow the landlord entry into the unit, the landlord may provide the tenant with a written 24-hour notice to enter the unit. Assessing the unit may take place whether or not you are present. An exception to the 24-hour notice would be any emergency requiring immediate access to the unit, such as fires, flooding, gas smells.
The family must give the housing authority a copy of any eviction notices promptly. Families do not automatically get a voucher. There are times when they must attend an informal hearing or meeting and tell us why they should be given the opportunity to remain on the program. We must consider history of noncompliance, how much rent is owed, seriously repeated lease violations, etc.
Use and occupancy of the unit. A, the family must use the assisted unit as residence by the family only and as the only residence for the family. The family must not sublease, let, assign, or transfer the unit. B, the family must obtain prior written approval from the landlord to add any adult to the household. C, the family must notify the housing authority of any birth, adoption, or court-awarded custody within 10 business days of the occurrence. The housing authority will either approve or deny your request. All housing authority approvals are contingent upon the landlord's approval as well.
The family must notify the housing authority within 10 business days if anyone moves out of the assisted unit. With prior approval of the housing authority, a foster child may reside in the unit. Absences from the unit. The family must supply any information requested by the PHA to verify that the family is living in the unit or information related to family absences from the unit and promptly notify the PHA in writing when the family is planning to be away from the unit for 14 or more days.
The family must disclose and verify social security numbers and sign and submit consent forms for obtaining information. The family must not commit fraud, bribery, or any other corrupt or criminal acts in connection with the program. Side deals are prohibited. This means that if the tenant and landlord work out a deal on the side to pay more rent than what is on the lease, both the Housing Choice Voucher Program participating family and the landlord may be terminated from the program.
The family and guests of the family must not engage in any drug-related criminal activity or violent criminal activity or alcohol abuse that threatens the health, safety, or right to peaceful enjoyment of other persons residing in the immediate vicinity of the premises. The family may not receive HCVP assistance while receiving another type of assistance, either for the same unit or for a different unit.
The family must notify the PHA in writing at least 30 days before moving out of the unit. However, your lease may state something other than a 30-day notice requirement. If the notice to vacate expires, you must follow with a new updated notice to move. What does your lease say?
The family must not commit any serious or repeated violation of the Housing Choice Voucher Program. These family obligations are also listed on the voucher. If you fail to meet any of these obligations, you may be terminated from the HCV program. You will receive two copies of the family obligations form. You will be required to sign, date, and return one of these copies to your caseworker.
The housing authority may give the prospective landlord the family's current address as shown in the records, the name and address of the landlord at the family's current and prior address if known, the tenancy history known to the housing authority, such as tenant cost damages, drug trafficking, violent activities, previous evictions, and owner complaints.
Just like the family, the landlord also has responsibilities. The landlord is responsible for maintaining management and rental functions for all assistant units, including selecting a voucher holder to lease the unit and deciding if a family is suitable for tenancy of the unit. It is the right of the owner to screen families. An owner may consider such factors as past tenancies, payment of rent and utility bills, care of the unit, evictions, credit reports, or criminal activities.
Maintaining the unit in accordance with housing quality standards. This includes performing preventative maintenance and repairs, preparing and furnishing to the housing authority information required under the housing assistance payment contract.
The landlord is also responsible for collecting any security deposits due from the family. The Housing Choice Voucher Program does not typically offer security deposit assistance. However, the HCBP will occasionally be awarded with grant money, which may be used for this assistance. For more information, contact your caseworker and request a copy of the Tenant-Based Rental Assistance Application, the TBRA application, if it's not in your folder. The landlord is responsible for collecting the family's portion of the rent. The owner must not charge more than established by the program. Collecting any charges for any damages to the unit caused by the family is also the owner's responsibility. This is not considered a side deal payment.
Enforcing tenant obligations under the lease. Paying for all utilities and services as stated in the lease. No additional charges may be requested from the tenant for these utilities or services. The tenant may only pay for utilities if the lease states the tenant is responsible for that utility. If there is only 1 meter service for multiple units, the landlord must pay for that utilities.
Note that we are not the Fair Housing Agency. However, we are required by law to state that everyone has a right to live where they want, regardless of race or color, sex, national origin, religious beliefs, familial status, including families with children or pregnant women, and handicap or disability. Unfortunately, there are still some landlords who have based their decision to rent you a unit on one or more of these reasons. This is considered discrimination. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination. The booklet, Fair Housing, which will be included in your packet, if you feel you have been discriminated against, you may file a complaint with the U.S. Department of HUD, Office of Fair Housing. To file a complaint, you would contact the Fair Housing Enforcement Center at the Midwest office by writing to complaints_office_05@hud.gov. This information can also be found on page 8 of the Fair Housing booklet that you will receive from your occupancy specialist.
Your Housing Choice Voucher will be issued for 60 calendar days. The issuance and expiration dates will be noted on your voucher. You must pay attention to the expiration date. Anyone in need of special accommodations due to a disability must contact their caseworker. You may request a list of units that are ADA accessible.
Terms of the voucher. For families transferring their voucher outside of Lorain County, you will receive 120 days on the voucher. For families staying within Lorain County, you will receive 60 days on the voucher. Extensions may be granted for extenuating circumstances, for example, hospitalization, death of an immediate family member. Requests must be submitted in writing for the approval of management.
How much assistance will I receive? HUD has set limitations on the amounts of monthly rental assistance a participant can receive. This amount is determined by 3 factors. 1, number of bedrooms listed on the voucher. 2, income in the household. 3, applicable payment standard. Examples of determining how much assistance you will receive are included in your orientation folder. Since everyone's financial situation is different, you may discuss your specific situation with your occupancy specialist. Refer to your orientation folder for the voucher payment standard packet.
Where can I live? You may live anywhere in Lorain County and be administered by LMHA. As a reasonable accommodation, if you are disabled, you also have the option of utilizing some of the special housing types the Housing Choice Voucher Program will subsidize. Let your occupancy specialist know if you are interested in assisted living. Remember, affordability must be met to qualify.
Whether you are a disabled person, an elderly person, or a family, you may also choose to exercise the portability option and transfer your voucher anywhere in the United States or Puerto Rico. If you choose to port, you will be subject to the administrative policies of the receiving housing authority. They may have different payment and occupancy standards.
To use your portability option, you must provide LMHA with the name and phone number of the HCVP portability specialist at the receiving housing authority. We will provide the receiving housing authority with the required information. It is your responsibility to comply with procedures for incoming portability. And remember, you only have 120 days to find housing.
The portability option has two limitations. The family must have established residency in Lorraine County at the time of their application and must have been able to provide documentation showing their residency status. This means that if you currently live in a county other than Lorraine County, but were living in Lorraine County at the time of your application, you will be permitted to exercise the portability option. If you currently do not live in Lorraine County and you also did not have an established residency in Lorraine County at the time of your application, you must be prepared to live in Lorraine County for 1 full year before you can exercise the portability option. Important, please contact your caseworker before you decide to port. We must make sure that the other housing authority is utilizing this option.
We're going to talk a little bit about deconcentration. The objective of deconcentration is to encourage clients to look outside of the common areas of concentrated poverty in order to find housing. In the city of Lorraine, the concentrated areas of poverty are the west side, the east side, the southwest, and the south side. In the city of Elyria is the southern, northwestern, and central areas. There's growing evidence that indicates the entire region is better off when there are fewer people living in neighborhoods of concentrated poverty. Schools located in smaller cities statistically have a higher rating on the Ohio Department of Education's report card. Please refer to your orientation folder for the deconcentration packet. You will receive this from your caseworker.
A good place to live. The Housing Choice Voucher Program allows you to choose a house or apartment that fits your family's needs. It may be where you are living now or somewhere else. LMHA has minimum housing quality standards. When looking for a unit, remember this is the home that you wish to rent. Walk through the unit and perform your own inspection. Make a list of any repairs or changes to discuss with the landlord prior to moving. As I noted in the screenshot, LMHA has minimum housing quality standards. Our inspectors are not city inspectors where they do the detailed information. So again, our inspectors are done by HUD requirements, not city inspections.
This is a list of some of the most common issues that we run into when we go out inspecting. This list is not all inclusive. There are other factors, obviously, but I will go through this list very briefly. There are ceilings and walls, no bulge, large cracks or holes, leaning walls, or loose or fallen surface materials allowed. On floors, no large cracks or holes, no loose tile or carpet. We cannot have no tripping hazards. Windows must be in good condition. All windows designed to open should have screens and be in working condition. No chipping, cracking, peeling, chalking paint on a surface, exterior or interior.
That also includes the garage and any sheds that are outside.
There must be working smoke detectors on every level, no missing outlet cover plates or loose frayed wiring, hot and cold running water in a bathroom or kitchen, must have an adequate heat source, which is defined as 65 to 68 degrees. Handrails must be wherever there are 4 or more steps. A window or exhaust fan is required in a bathroom. Hot water tank must have a pressure relief valve that is between 6 to 12 inches from the ground. And as we stated earlier, if there is one hot water tank or furnace for multiple family units, the landlord must pay for that utility.
Health and safety. The building site must have smoke detectors on each level, fire exits, lights in common hallways, stairs with railings, common hallways that are safe, no infestation of mice, vermin, or bed bugs, no piles of trash and garbage inside or outside the unit, no chipping, cracking, peeling, chalking paint. Most houses or apartments have at least a living room, kitchen, bedroom, except for efficiency apartments, and a bathroom. There must be a separate bathroom for privacy. All ground floors, windows, and doors must have locks.
This is an important policy concerning infestation and determination of responsibility. Effective July 1st, 2017, the landlord is now initially responsible for extermination of vermin and other infestation. However, if a landlord determines that infestation is caused by housekeeping habits that had previously been addressed with the tenant, the family may be in violation of their lease and the family obligations. This is cause for eviction and termination of your assistance. The landlord would need to show documentation that the pest controller and or landlord had addressed housekeeping habits with the family.
The decisions to modify the policy was based on comments and concerns from the public hearing for the LMHA annual plan and was based on the recommendations of the Legal Aid Society. The policy reads, the determination of responsibility. The owner shall exterminate vermin and other infestations as may be necessary to keep the premises in a fit and habitable conditions provided. However, where an infestation is repeated and caused by housekeeping habits that were previously made known to the family by the owner or pest controller, it may be considered a lease violation and cause for eviction. The PHA may also terminate the family's assistance on that basis. If you have infestation at your current unit, you must be treated. Otherwise, you will take them with you.
Also in the packet you're going to receive, there's going to be a lead-based paint requirement packet. All painted surface inside and out of the unit you plan to rent must be solid and intact. Due to the hazards of lead-based paint poisoning, there must not be any signs of chipping, cracking, peeling, or chalking paint on any painted surfaces. Lead poisoning can result from ingesting, which is eating, paint chips and breathing in lead dust particles. Lead poisoning can cause impaired neurological development such as decreased IQ, learning disabilities, behavior problems. It may also result in premature births, miscarriages, stillbirths, anemia, blood pressure problems, kidney problems in pregnant women and adults.
Important factors to consider and items to keep in mind. You cannot rent from a close relative unless approved as a reasonable accommodation. Close relative is defined as parents, grandparents, children, grandchildren, brother and sisters, including step and in-laws. Ideally, you want to look for a unit with the same number of bedrooms that is listed on your voucher. If this unit, is this unit affordable to you with other expenses? Make sure you have the security deposit as discussed with your landlord. Although it is no longer required to transfer utilities in your name, if the landlord will be requiring this as a condition of your rental agreement, make sure you'll be able to transfer the utilities in your name or the name of another adult who will be listed on your lease. Do your own inspection of the unit and make a list of items you would like to have fixed.
Searching for a rental unit. In determining your portion of the rent, the housing authority is required to compare the utility allowance amount that corresponds with the size of your voucher to the utility allowance amount that corresponds with the number of bedrooms in the unit you're going to rent. From there, we're required to use the lower of those two dollar amounts in the calculation of your rent. What this means to you is that if your voucher size is different than the number of bedrooms in your unit, your rent may be higher than you had expected. To avoid having this happen, it is important to look for a unit with an equal number of bedrooms as your voucher size allows.
Renting a unit, what you must know if you are currently live in a public housing. Your housing choice voucher program occupancy specialist cannot process your new admission if you owe unpaid rent to your public housing manager. You must be current on your rent in your public housing unit. Your housing choice voucher program occupancy specialist cannot process your new admission if you owe a balance on a repayment agreement, debt that you incurred while residing in your public housing unit. You must not owe a balance on a repayment agreement debt. If you plan to continue living in Lorraine County, your HCVP occupancy specialist cannot process your new admission for the HCV program until your current project manager does your end of participation from the public housing program. If you plan to port out of Lorraine County, the Housing Choice Voucher Program Portability Officer cannot process your port out until your current project manager does your end of participation from the public housing program. Because you cannot be housed in more than one program at once, it is very important that you stay mindful of your voucher expiration date. If your public housing manager cannot process your EOP because of your failure to return the keys to your PH unit, and you should have your HC voucher expired due that wait period, then your HCVP file will be inactivated. Should you still wish to participate in the HCV program, you would be required to apply once the waiting list is open. Again, if you live in a public housing unit, we cannot enter your information into the computer system until you have turned in keys to your public housing manager. Therefore, you need to act on this situation immediately. It will delay entering the information into the system. It will delay the owner getting a rent payment. If you have any questions, contact your caseworker.
We're going to talk a little bit about the request for tenancy approval, RFTA packet. These documents must be filled out completely by the landlord and signed by both the landlord and the family before you turn them in. You're going to receive this in the mail from your caseworker. It's not something you can download offline. Without these completed forms, we cannot do any inspection, no housing assistance payment can be made, etc. This is the item, the most important item that you're going to be required to return to your caseworker.
The request for tenancy approval, also known as RFTA. These documents consist of RFTA request for tenancy approval cover sheet, mandatory online landlord briefing procedure, instruction for request for tenancy approval, attention landlords, owners, and tenant page, lease cover sheet, owner must complete and return, relationship form. Owners and any family members that will be living in the Section 8 unit cannot be related unless you go through the reasonable accommodation, and you will need to contact your caseworker for the paperwork. Occupancy certification by owner, lead-based disclosure form, owner identification form, stove and refrigerator certification, owner identification form, and on the back side, there's a landlord information. The landlord or owner needs to make sure they read the top part of the box to determine if the bottom half needs to be filled out. If it's not filled out, we will send the paperwork back to you. Direct deposit notice, direct deposit form, RFTA HUD form 52517. That form has to be completely filled out from top to bottom, front and back. This is information that's relayed onto the lease.
So what happens next? Once you have found a suitable unit and you and your landlord have filled out the request for tenancy approval, you must return this packet to the Housing Choice Voucher Program Department. You do not need to contact your caseworker and set up an appointment. You can just drop it off or mail it in. Sometimes the landlord will want to mail it in or drop it off himself. That's fine. However it gets to us is fine. Your occupancy specialist will then use the information on the RFTA along with your information that is in your file, like your wages and how many dependents you have and so forth. And she will do what's called an affordability test. If the unit meets affordability, then your OS, which is your occupancy specialist, will give the RFTA to the scheduling department to schedule what we call an initial inspection. This process could take as much as 14 days, depending on several factors. For example, if the HCVP just held an initial orientation, a large group of people doing the same orientation you're viewing right now, it may take a little longer to schedule an inspection than it would take to schedule otherwise for a person who's, say, moving. That is because the Housing Authority would typically see a sudden increase in submitted RFTAs shortly after holding one of these initial orientations. In a similar way, the season itself might affect the timeliness of scheduling an inspection since more clients move during the warmer months than during the winter.
The inspector is responsible for justifying the amounts of rent being requested by the landlord. In order to do that, he must, 1, conduct an inspection of the unit, 2, determine if the rent that he has requested is reasonable or not due to excessive or inflated, He does this by comparing your prospective unit with unsubsidized units in the area to make sure that the landlord is not charging more rent than unsubsidized units on the open market. If the requested rent is reasonable, the HCVP inspector will sign off on the amount and give it to the assistant manager for final approval. So again, our inspectors will do a rent comparison with other units that someone is not on Section 8 in order to justify if the rent is going to be reasonable or not.
After the unit has been inspected and the rent has been approved, you will receive what's called an agency determination letter. This document tells you if the unit has passed or failed its inspection and the amount of rent that was approved. It also lists the next steps for you to do. If a tenant supplied stove and or refrigerator are not in place, the tenant must sign the form included in the RFTA packet. This form must be returned to the caseworker before the unit is considered passed. It is considered fraud if the family signs the form without the stove or refrigerator working. You must remember too that no HAP will be paid without a past inspection.
Your occupancy specialist will complete the finalized paperwork and send you a copy for your records. You will not be required to come to the housing authority to sign the final paperwork. If it has not already been provided to the housing authority, the family or owner must provide your occupancy specialist with a copy of the signed lease. This informs the housing authority that you and your owner have met and reviewed the terms of this document. The landlord will be sent 2 copies of the contract to sign and date. Leases and contracts must be signed within 60 days of the lease effective date.
We're going to talk a little bit about utility reimbursement payment. There's some important changes that just took effect as of February 3rd, 2020. The Housing Choice Voucher Program no longer prints paper utility reimbursement payment checks, also known as IRP checks. The LMHA has partnered with US Bank to issue all IRP eligible clients a prepaid debit card. If you are eligible to receive an IRP, the Housing Choice Voucher Program will automatically enroll you for this service. You will receive your card by mail along with instructions on how to activate your card. Important to note, if you receive an IRP through a prepaid debit card and later on, due to income changes, you no longer receive an IRP, you must keep your prepaid debit card. Please do not throw it away. If you do not keep your original prepaid debit card, and then later on down the road, you once again become eligible to receive an IRP, you will need to contact US Bank for a replacement prepaid debit card. The HCVP will not be able to provide you with a replacement. Once registered, funds will be deposited into your account no later than the 2nd business day of each month. Note that holidays do not count as business days. For more information on your prepaid debit card, please call Cardholder Services at 855-288-6161. You're going to want to hang on to that phone number because if you do have trouble with your prepaid card, that's the number you would call, not your caseworker.
Tenancy addendum. This document is attached to the request for tenancy approval. This document explains many of the family obligations, participants and owners' rights under the HCV program. This is given to the participant and the owner as part of the lease and as part of the housing assistance payment contract. It is important that you take the time to review it and understand your rights.
Ongoing continuing assistance. Once the lease has been signed by you and your owner and the contract has been signed by the owner and the HCV, your HCVP assistance will continue unchanged unless you report a change in your income or family composition. You may remain on the program until either A, you violate a federal regulation or family obligation, you no longer need or want the assistance, in which case you can self-terminate, or any restrictions with program funding.
What is an informal meeting? If a participant feels the need to discuss his or her participation with someone other than their occupancy specialist, the participant may request an informal meeting. This request must be made in writing. The meeting will be scheduled, an appointment date and time will be mailed to the participant. The meeting will be held by a housing authority representative other than the occupancy specialist. The participant will have the opportunity to present written or oral objections to the matter in question. A final decision will be given to the participant in writing.
What is an informal hearing? When a termination of assistance notice is issued to a participant, the participant will be given the opportunity for an informal hearing. This request must be made in writing no date later than the due date that will be written on the notice. So you'll be told a due date that you would have to have that if you want to dispute a hearing termination. The informal hearing is conducted by a hearing officer with the Housing Choice Voucher Program manager present. The participant will have the opportunity to present written or oral objections and present any witnesses that may provide information regarding the termination. A final decision will be mailed to the participant within 10 days of the informal hearing.
Moving with HZP assistance, the Housing Authority can prohibit any moves during the first year of the lease. The Housing Authority can limit the number of moves in 1 year to 1 move per year. Each new lease is for 1 year. After the first year, if the participant wants to move, they must check the lease they signed with their landlord to see what the requirements are allowing them to move. Then they must contact the occupancy specialist to pick up a voucher and attend a moving orientation before moving from the unit. Again, leases are between tenant and owner landlord. You will need to contact your owner or review your lease in order to determine the moving status if you need to give a 30, 45, 60, 90-day notice. As long as you are in good standing with the Housing Authority, the Housing Authority may deny a move if the unit is insufficient funds available or if the client owes a balance on a repayment agreement debt.
In the months between your annual renewal certification, you are required to report all changes in earned income and household composition within 10 business days of the change occurring. At your annual renewal, you are required to update all household income, earned as well as unearned, along with any applicable expenses, deductions, assets, and household composition changes. You are not required to sign an amendment when there is a change in between your annual renewals. However, should you disagree with the outcome of an amendment, you may contact your OS no later than the due date that will be stated in the amendment. What I want to stress here on this slide is that where it says earned income, you see in yellow and the 10 business days, what that means is in between your annual renewal certification, if you say you start getting child support or something like that, an unearned income, you do not need to report that. If you report it, you feel comfortable, better off reporting it, go ahead and do it. It's not hurting anything, but you're not required. You're only required to report your earned income changes in between your annuals. Now, at the annual, you are required to report everything. So if it's your annual, we need to know child support. We need to know Social Security, SSI, everything, earned and unearned income. If you report timely like you're supposed to do and you're following your family obligations, you'll get a letter from your caseworker that says, thank you for complying. We're not going to add this on into your next annual renewal or your next move. If we find out later that you did not report earned income that you were supposed to report, we are not only going to add it onto your case, but we are going to add it on retroactive to the point in time when you should have reported it. So that's very important to keep in mind.
Special programs. There are 2 optional special programs available to the HZVP participants to help you and your family.
I'm going to talk very briefly about the program. The first one is called Jump Start. It was formerly known as the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. So if you know somebody who was signed up for the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, this is the same program. In this program, the family sets goals for themselves, such as completing their education, clearing up credit issues, owning their own home. And the Jump Start coordinator, which is Janie Justice, helps guide the family towards those goals. And as the family achieves self-sufficiency through increased earned income, an escrow account is set up and the money starts adding up in their escrow account. That money is theirs when they have completed their goals. So you're going to want to let your occupancy specialist know if you're interested in this program. The second program is the Housing Choice Voucher Home Ownership option. This program is used to assist a family in purchasing a home. The LMHA will make housing assistance payments toward a mortgage instead of rent. The Housing Choice Voucher Home Ownership Program Coordinator, which is also Janie Justice, will help guide you through the steps leading towards home ownership. You must complete 1 full year on rental assistance before you qualify for this program.
Visit us on the web at www.lmha.org. Like us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/LorraineMHA. Looking for a unit, www.gosection8.com. There are computers available in the kiosk room in the lobby.